And so the saying goes, never let a good opportunity go to waste. Whereas people are still coping with the effects of COVID-19, schools are still locked, businesses are still struggling in Uganda, people are still fighting to get back on their feet here and there. We are having COVIDpreneurs or COVID millionaires. This is a group of individuals in the country who have reaped from this entire pandemic, especially within Museveni's cabal of criminals. Now, there's this scandal that is taking place in the country about 31 billion Ugandan shillings that has been siphoned and stolen by the so-called COVIDpreneurs or COVID millionaires of this generation that we see today. You see, Museveni is not a monster. He's not a guy who knows very well how to uplift a society or how to uplift a nation out of poverty. For example, through using things like mineral wealth, like coming up with programs that can really uplift, people's standards of living and uplift a nation from being dependent on foreign aid to being a self-sustaining nation. That one he has not mastered, and he does not know how to do it. He's a person who knows very well. He's a begging artist. He's a beggar. Things to deal with begging, he knows how to beg. The other thing that he thrives very much in is crises. If a crisis falls, Museveni knows how to manipulate it and make money out of it. And so we are seeing a group of individuals that are propping up in Uganda known as COVIDpreneurs or COVID millionaires in one way or the other. Now, there's this scandal that has been happening of one doctor known as Dr. Musenero Monica. She's the Minister of Science and Technology as well as Innovation, and she was also the Senior Presidential Advisor on Epidemics. Now, given that, of course, we had COVID, she was one of the people in the center who were doing this sort of work, and that kind of stuff. Now, she's among those people, a team of ladies that included Dr. Diana Atwine, there's another lady, Dr. Ruth Acheng, as well as this Dr. Musenero. They were the people surrounding Museveni and giving him what to speak and what to say all this time. And the nation would wait if anything that was happening. So those are the people, the ladies, 3 ladies. And I'll come to the reason as to why it is always ladies. Now, there is a whistleblower, a gentleman known as an MP from Muntungamo, who is known as Musinguzi Yona, who came to the floor of parliament a couple of days ago and revealed this sensational information that Dr. Musenero swindled 31 billion while she was under an organization known as PRESIDE, the Presidential Initiative on Epidemics and something of that sort. A research kind of organization that Museveni had opened up during the pandemic and that kind of stuff. Now, this gentleman called Yona tells the parliament that this doctor known as Musenero had convinced Museveni that she can produce a vaccine that can cure COVID-19. That is in 2020, that she can start the research. And then she was given 31 billion and so on and so forth. Now let us watch this video first of this gentleman, Yona, speaking about this particular incident and how things happened, and then we break it down.
I want this house to recall that in 2020, a certain group of, I may call scientists, convinced the president that they could produce a vaccine for COVID. And indeed, they went ahead and drew big sums of money. In 2020, they drew 20 billion under a company called PRESIDE. PRESIDE, which is a sole company under the directorship of the one who has been here called Dr. Musenero, is part of us. In 2021, she convinced the president that when she is a minister for science, she will produce a vaccine. She went ahead and got 50 billion from the Ministry of Science. The scientists in the Ministry of Science have not gotten any salary. They have even abolished the ministry, but she went ahead to get 50 billion that she's going to make a vaccine. Yesterday, as of yesterday, I was at their head office in Ntinda, where the so-called preside is. I have not found there any test tube in that office. There is no laboratory. I have not found there any scientist, because I found there her cousin, who is the security guard guarding on the chairs in the office. We want to know. She ran away, but Madam Speaker, let this parliament not be used for rubber stamping of masqueraders to come and withdraw money and siphon and take, and we remain here clapping. We are passing a budget when we are passing it people's pockets. Madam Speaker, I beg that the minister of Ruth is suffering a lot, importing, looking for donations when our own money can buy Ugandans medicine, when the money has been siphoned by so-called people who have marketed themselves, gone to whoever would be to the president and lied him that they can. They even chase away the right doctors who would do for us wonders in the Ministry of Science. They go ahead and convince the president to even abolish science, abolish the whole ministry, or in the name of siphoning the country. Madam Speaker, I beg to move that through the Minister of Health, who is suffering on importations, on donations of COVID, that the money which was given for COVID should be given accountability under that Ministry of Science, because she's part of us. Information allowed.
Now, as you have heard Mr. Yona, making those revelations, now you should know, number one, that Yona comes from the same party as Museveni, the NRM. Okay? Now, this gentleman also, I've been reading through his profile, and he's a kind of a whistleblower who goes and researches his things. I don't know where he gets his information, and he brings them to the floor of parliament, revealing information about ministers that are stealing money, this and this and that. This is not the first time that this gentleman has revealed information, which is really interesting to me. But then what is really fascinating is the fact that what really made people turn their eyebrows is the fact that a couple of days later, after this thing was revealed at the floor of parliament, Museveni came out and is like, stop attacking Dr. Musenero, the person who stole the 31 billion. And then in a very angry speech that he spoke, in a very angry speech that lasted for like 10 minutes, the Museveni guy was raging about people talking about Dr. Musenero, the 31 billion, and all this kind of stuff, and saying how Dr. Musenero is a decorated war general and all that kind of crap. Now, for me, I realized the three things. That, in fact, Dr. Musenero is innocent. That is, at least according to me. Because look here, guys. There is no one in Uganda. You cannot move even 100 million Ugandan shillings from one account to another without the knowledge of the state, without the knowledge of Museveni. His network within banks, his criminal network, the so-called spies, will already have known, and they would already have alerted different authorities that there is someone making a big transaction here. Number one. We need to understand and establish, is Musenero capable of stealing 31 billion or swindling that money? Absolutely not. She cannot. Let me ask you one thing. Do you think you can steal 31 billion from Museveni's government and he's not aware? Of course it cannot happen. We know that. Now you should understand that there are ministries in Uganda where Museveni strategically positions those ministries to have women, not because he wants these women to perform, but because he wants to use women as conduits. He wants to use these women to fall on the sword. And he is also aware that women are most likely that they will not steal money. He knows very well that women are not capable of stealing those big sums of money, like we have seen the recent corruption scandals. Now, when he places men, you see, corruption scandals between women and men in Museveni's regime, they are quite interesting to study. Because when you see Bukenya stealing money, or Mike Mukuro, or Jim Muhwezi, these people will steal some bit of the money and then keep the rest for Museveni, but then use that money to have power in the constituencies they come from, whereby they can dictate politics in that particular constituent. You get it? And these are kind of people that if Museveni maybe wants money taken from one department to another, their first question will be like, where is my cut? Now, for women, it does not happen. Women are more loyal. They will do as they are being told because they believe or think they have the backing of Museveni. So that means that it is easier for Museveni to use them and the first family to use them as conduits in order to fulfill their criminal ambitions. This has happened with different ladies like Zoe Bakoko Bakuru. You can look up a video on YouTube where she narrates a story where Salim Saleh would come to her at the ministry and tell her to wire money on his personal account. We've seen these things with the former PS in the Prime Minister's office, a lady known as Madame Gua today. That lady who was the first the first lady to be arrested during COVID, saying that she inflated the prices of posho and all this kind of stuff. That is the flour, maize flour. Now we are also seeing Madame Monica Msenero also falling to the sword, because the simple question would be, okay, if she stole 31 billion, where did it end up? Where did it? You want to tell me that this lady is capable of stealing 31 billion without Museveni's knowledge? Of course not. Now, this is what happens. For me, I come to conclusions of 2 or 3. Number 1, we need to ask the questions about the whistleblower. Who is the person bringing that information? We all know is the gentleman known as Musinguzi Yona, who is an NRM person. And we do understand that this guy, now, there must be wrangles, of course, within the NRM itself or within the people within the ministry or the state house that are fighting this battle or that are fighting this war that we are not given their cut in one way or the other. That can be there. But also we see there is a possibility that it is Museveni that is actually leaking this information to the Parliament of Uganda, such that it is something that we get used to, in that, there wouldn't be that much probing of the situation. And that is why you see that Museveni has weakened all these accountability institutions in the country, either by appointing people that he knows that are going to be very weak or can easily be manipulated, or by simply taking complete power out of this the entire, arms of, so not arms, but these entire organs that are supposed to be fighting corruption and holding people in public offices accountable. A case in point is the Office of the Inspector General of Government, the IGG, that is responsible for investigating corruption scandals in the country. That office has already been weakened. How has Museveni done it? Number 1, he has duplicated another office within his office, an office within the office of the president, headed by a lady known as Nakalima. That is actually unconstitutional. It is nowhere in the constitution of Uganda that Museveni can create an office within his office so that to investigate corruption scandals. So this office literally took away the powers of the IGG. And then he appointed a stooge, a lady known as Betty Kamya, a political failure in Uganda. This lady has failed more than any other lady in the politics of the country. Now, Betty Kamya is also there, and literally there's nothing that this IGG's office can do either way. So what happens is you either take this case to Nakalema, that is within Museveni's office, and he will decide whether he investigates the matter or not. But now, what we see on this hand is that if it is Museveni that is leaking the information, why? Number one, he wants someone to fall on the sword, someone to take the blame, not him. Museveni will never blame himself that he stole the money, even when he is caught red-handed. Like the situation we saw where Sam Kutesa gave him 500,000 US dollars that he got from Patrick Ho. Museveni later on came out and said, oh no, I thought it was a gift. That is how cheap this guy is. He took a bribe of 500,000 US dollars. Can you imagine? And then it still said, no, it wasn't my fault. Now, the same thing we are seeing here, that he has put Madame Monica Msenero on the cross. And let me tell you one thing. This lady, if you read her CV, she's highly educated. This lady, she has had her credibility and integrity. She's one of the best, actually she's one of the epidemiologists that we have in the country. The very few. And this is a tactic that Museveni is always using on this so-called elite class or these so-called people that we believe are intellectuals that are highly educated. This is what he did to Professor Apollon Sivambi. This is what he has been doing to people, Professor Gilbert Kenya. This is what he has been doing to all these people. Even these Luther Chengs, these Monica Mseneros, he gets a person of high integrity and literally puts a case on him. Now, Msenero is not going to blame Museveni for what is happening to her. No. She's going to blame other people that, oh, they are those people that are fighting me. And she will always look back to Museveni as his savior. And yet Msenero knows very well that when she siphoned and swindled that 31 billion, that money ended up in Museveni's pockets. And then for Museveni to cover his tracks, for Museveni to make sure that he is the savior or he comes out as the person who is going to salvage the entire situation, he uses some people within his party to tell them to blow this thing and tell the entire world that this lady stole 31 billion. And then Museveni has to come in and save Msenero. Now, for everything that Msenero will do, it will all be dependent on Museveni's wishes. That's how he tricks them. He's a pimp, literally. He's pimping all these women in the ministries, using them to do his bidding. You get it? And the women who are lucky to jump him, the likes of 17, they ran away. But now you had these Kaziwes, the Specials, Awandela Kaziwe, you have these so-called Mseneros, you have the Luther Chengs, they are all there. Now, if you really want to catch the person who stole the 31 billion, Yora Musinguzi, you should tell the world that it is either Museveni, the first family, or his crime family, the empire. It must be linking somewhere there. Bro, you cannot take 31 billion without the knowledge of Salim Saleh, Muhozi, Janet Museveni, Yoweri Museveni. You can't. And that's why I believe Msenero is now being played around like ping pong in the entire crime family, where they have put her on the cross in order to have leverage on her, number one. Number two, in order to get this particular case and put it out there in the public so that Museveni can control, or the State House can control the narrative around this particular case. As I want this episode up, recently I did an episode where I talked about Abudu Katonto's committee that they had set up to investigate COVID funds. And I even told some members of parliament in the NUP who were made part of this particular commission that do not be part of it because that thing was illegal. They went, and most of them were even part of... Okay, now let us ask. The investigations you made, how far? And we know Katuntu is a very corrupt individual. What he did in Kosase, after, I don't know, allegedly taking some money, and he came up with the bogus conclusions on how, the Sudil case and that kind of stuff. And now these guys, they got Anita Amongi. She formed a committee of different members of parliament to investigate COVID funds and all this kind of stuff. And yet we have things like Kosase, we have things like Public Accounts Committee, and so on and so forth, that are within the constitution that are mandated to investigate public funds. So what they do is they commit these crimes and then they constitute their own committees in order to investigate themselves with soft gloves. And when people come out and you will jab it, not the same way as because now what they are doing, literally, they want to control the story. They want to control everything because the Public Accounts Committee, as well as these COSASA things, were getting heated and they were closing in to COVID funds. And trust me, more allegations about COVID are going to come out in order. These guys are going to be looking to control the narrative and everything. Okay, guys, thank you very much for listening. Let us meet in the next episode. Please endeavor to subscribe, comment, and share the video with your friends if you liked what you watched or heard today. Have a nice evening. Bye-bye.